What's up, guys? Welcome back to the shop. In today's video we're going to be making a bread knife out of ball bearings. So here I have very small ball bearings. They are 3 millimeters, a little bit over an eighth if I'm not mistaken, and we got about 10,000 of them we're putting into this canister, or maybe a little bit less than 10,000. These ball bearings are 52-100 chrome plated ball bearings, and we're going to be pairing them up with 1090 steel powder plus 2% nickel, and that's going to create our contrast, and we're going to have our lights with the powder and our darks with the ball bearings. One very important thing with working with these ball bearings, they are very small, so the gaps in between are a lot smaller. So it's very important to make sure you get plenty of steel powder down in there, and if you think you don't have enough, keep going. More than likely it's not all the way to the bottom. Another way I would do it would be layering it or mixing it all together in a separate bowl and then putting it into the canister. That way you make sure you have complete coverage. As always, first things first, press top to bottom, make sure we solidify everything on the inside, and afterwards we go on ahead and crush in our sides and remove our lid. By the time I start working on the sides, the insides are pretty much already forge welded together, because pressing it from top to bottom first applies all the force on the seams that could break, which are my welds. And since the canister is factory welded, it's not gonna burst open, so you get pressure from all sides and you get a really nice solid forge weld. And finally, after all that wiggling, we can finally get our billet out and we can start forging it down. One thing, it is very important to work it nice and slow. If you try to press it too much, it will crack and possibly break apart. Even though we have a lot of steel powder in here and it is forge welded together, there could still be small gaps in there, and until everything is compact and tighten as much as possible, you can always run the risk of it cracking, specifically around the edges. And now we're going to start forging the actual bread knife. As you can see, the background changed a little bit, and that's because I made the initial billet a few months ago and I finally got a chance to actually work on it. And since then I acquired that cabinet that's back there to hold more of my junk. So pretty much what I'm working for is a bread knife, and I've never made a bread knife before, and I looked up different designs. A lot of people did a standard knife and then they just serrated it, but I thought that was a little bit boring, so I wanted to try to make almost like an S shape, to where you have a very thin blade but it's a step down from the actual handle. I thought it looked a little bit more cooler, I don't know, it just looked more interesting to make, so I decided to go with that kind of build. But I had a lot of trouble with making the S shape. Though I could have stopped the whole project altogether and made a jig to just press it on the press, I figured it was better just to tough it out and try to figure out how to forge that shape in. Though moving forward I will be making a jig if I ever make any more of these guys, just for efficiency's sake. I wasn't sure what size I wanted the knife, but I figured I'd want at least 8 inches. Most loaves are pretty tall and pretty wide, so I figured a knife that could go pretty much from side to side would be more efficient and be easier to use versus a smaller knife that maybe wouldn't be able to cut, and you'd have to, you know, wiggle it all the way through and be cutting half of it at a time, which doesn't really sound very efficient. Also, I wasn't quite sure how much curve to add to it, so I did add quite a bit of curve to it. If I were to do it again, I'd probably make it a little bit straighter and give it a little bit less curve. At this point, I have it pretty much forged out. I just want to make sure I straighten out the handle and hopefully have enough material to make a nice comfortable handle. At one point I did worry I didn't have enough for a full tang handle and I was going to have to switch my plan over to a hidden tang, but I ended up with just enough material to get away with it. So I forced the shape of the knife pretty close to what I wanted it, so I ended up taking very little material off. Pretty much just fixing the little S shape and a little bit of extra material at the tang of the knife. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this bread knife shape, if you would have gone with a different shape. I looked at a couple. They all look like standard chef's knife, and I wanted to do something a little bit more, I don't even know what the word is, just a little bit more eccentric, I guess. I don't know. I wanted to do a knife that looked a little bit cooler, even though I'm not even sure if this shape looks any cooler than any other shape. But regardless, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And we heat treat. We had a very successful heat treat with little to no warping, fortunately. Alright guys, so we are at temper. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of the shape or not yet. We'll see once I start actually using it. But I think it'll make it pretty decent. Bread knife. I'm gonna do serrations on this guy, but first thing I'm gonna do is clean it up and grind in my bevels, and I'm gonna do the serration at the very end. And I don't really know what I'm doing for this guy. I've never done like a bread knife. That's why I went with this shape. I just looked a couple online, and this shape seemed like something fun to do, so I went with that. But overall, if it works out, it is nice and straight, which is a good thing. I'm gonna put it on the surface grinder, and I'm gonna go ahead and clean it up. Then we're gonna go ahead and grind our bevels and get it cleaned up. So for my final grind, I really didn't have a lot of material to take off. This knife was relatively thin and it was pretty flexible, which I worried about. I thought I had made it a little too thin and that it should have been beefier, but I've never owned one and I've never seen one in person, like held one, so I wasn't really sure what I was doing. So I figured if it didn't work this time, I'd just make another one down the line and make sure to make it a bit thicker. One thing I've been doing recently is cleaning the whole knife with a 240 grit belt, and it really helps out on the hand sanding. It cuts the time by a lot. Alright guys, so we got the knife hand sanded. We're going to start up on the handle. First things first, I'm repairing this piece. I don't remember quite the name of it. I'll probably put it up or I'll tell you on the voiceover what this is called once I look it up. But it is not an opal because I have the opal. These are similar scales, but they have a different name. Nonetheless, I'm going to glue them up to the G10 with some 5-minute epoxy and let them settle up, and then we're going to go ahead and get our knife handle shaped up and everything. That way we can do our glue up. So as I put up on the video, it is Tiffany Blue G10, and it is a little bit different than the opal, but it is a bit of a pain to work with, so I probably won't be using it again. I ended up just buying a set of scales versus a whole 12 by 12 sheet just because I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not, and it turns out I'm not the biggest fan. I think I prefer the opal. It has a brighter look to it, while this one has more of a pastel look to it. I don't know, just preference. Let me know in the comments down below which one you prefer, this one or the opal, which is the one I've used in a couple knives already. Most of the times I do the pieces separately. I don't glue them together, but this time I opted to glue them together with some 5-minute epoxy just to see if it was a little bit more efficient, because I run into the issue if, let's say, I'm running low on time and I want to do the glue up with a 5-minute epoxy versus a 7-hour epoxy, which is what I usually use. And so doing it like this is a lot more efficient because the glue has dried on me whenever I use the 5-minute epoxy when I'm doing 4 layers versus just doing 2 layers. So in that sense, it is more efficient just to do the handle material to the G10 liners ahead of time. But this is just a new process I'm doing now, and it did seem to be a bit more efficient, even though I still ended up using the 7-hour epoxy whenever I glued up the knife, because I ended up gluing pretty much late at night right before I ended my work day. Now we're on to making the serrations. I wasn't sure how to make these, so I just took my smallest wheel and I started notching the knife edge, and I notched it to where I created those spikes, and those spikes are going to be doing the majority of the cutting. At that point, those spikes were pretty much at 0, so they were definitely going to do all the cutting that was necessary. And then I sharpened them at a very shallow angle, and that created a fairly sharp knife. Though there's no real way to know if it was enough until it's time for a cut test. So now that I have the knife ready, all that's left to do is to glue it up and shape our handle. And this is the part of the video where I'd like to ask you guys, if you're not subscribed, be sure to check. About 80% of you guys watched multiple videos but aren't subscribed, so if you want to subscribe, that's a free and easy way to help support the channel and help the channel grow, so I can keep making videos, and hopefully making bigger, better videos down the line, and exploring new knife styles just like this bread knife that I'm doing right here. And also, this bread knife will be available if you want to help support the channel in a more monetary fashion. This bread knife will be available on the website as soon as this video comes out, as well as a couple other cool knives that I have on there that are waiting to find their forever home. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All that really helps with the algorithm, and it helps push the video out to new audiences. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate your support over the years, and I hope you'll continue supporting me on this knife making journey. Speaking of a knife making journey, I just watched a video by Tony Cerverio. I don't really know how to pronounce his last name. Sorry, Tony. But he made a really interesting video on basically knife making and being a full-time knife maker, and I found it very interesting. So if you're a knife maker and you want to be a full-time knife maker, I definitely recommend you go watch his video. I'll put a link to it in the description down below. If you're interested, you can go check it out. He makes some really good videos, so I would really appreciate it if you went and go check out his channel. Alright guys, so here I have the knife. Before I put it in the edge, I got to test if it can actually cut. I've never made a bread knife before, so there's only one real way to check it, and that is with some bread. Here I have a sourdough that my sister-in-law made, and hopefully it cuts. Oh yeah. She cuts. See if I can get a more even cut. So she definitely cuts, which is a relief. I wasn't sure if I was sharpening it right. Let's do one more cut. It's quite satisfying. Sweet. And I'll be having some bread for lunch. Overall, very successful. I think these guys are a little bit bigger than what I wanted, more set apart on the spikes, but that was the smallest wheel I had. But then again, it kind of did a pretty good job. So I consider this guy a win. So let's go on ahead and go to the edge and reveal the ball bearing pattern in here. And now we go to our edge so we can reveal the pattern that's on the knife. This is a very tight ball bearing pattern, and I'm pretty sure it's going to come out very nicely. One thing I would like to ask you guys, let me know in the comments down below what you think about this. But I'm thinking about adding cutting boards to the website. Cutting boards like the one you saw me cutting that bread on, or you know, different kinds, whatever wood that we can find here locally. That is an item I would like to stock on my website. So if you guys are interested in buying a cutting board, let me know what you think about that on the comments down below, and we can chat about it. With that aside, here's a final look at the knife. It performed very well on the bread test, so I'm very happy about that. And overall, I'm very happy with the way it turned out. Still not really a fan of the look of the handle. I kind of like the opal more, but that's just a preference because I'm trying to, you know, compare them. Overall, the knife turned out great. I like the way it looks with that little S in it. And overall, I will definitely be making more bread knives in the future. But as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate y'all and your support, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.